Have you ever pondered why those who carry the wildest dreams often feel their bodies too heavy to move? As if an invisible weight holds back their steps, even though their hearts are full of fire. This isn't coincidence. In the language of soul work, chosen people are those whose lives keep pushing to break old patterns. They are born into family lines where silence is the rule, then they speak. They land in cultures that worship masks, then they take them off. They are chosen not by a human committee, but by an unrelenting inner calling to change the narrative, heal the wounds they feel, rewrite inherited scripts, and turn personal awakening into service for many. Their mission is transformation, starting from within themselves. Imagine you, full of ambition and intelligence, staring at a mountain you know you can climb. Yet your body feels like wet cement that won't budge. If this is starting to touch your heart, this is the perfect moment to join us on the Metasitta channel. By turning on the notification bell and subscribing, you're not just connecting with content like this, but also helping build a more beautiful and peaceful world, starting from yourself. Let's grow together, one reflection at a time. Carl Jung, the great thinker on the human soul, wouldn't blame that resistance. He would be curious, asking what your soul is doing with your energy beneath the surface. Because for Jung, the psyche, the soul, is economical, never wasting power. If you feel lazy, it's not an absence of strength. It's strength tied up in knots. Procrastination, in this framework, isn't a moral failure, it's a messenger. It slows you down just enough so you can hear the part of yourself that's not sure if the goal is truly yours. Ambition without alignment breeds paralysis. The ego says, hurry forward, while the self, Jung's term for your wholeness, whispers, walk the truer path. When those two voices clash, your feet stop. That's not weakness. That's wisdom. Your soul prefers pause over polluting the path with borrowed dreams. As Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. If you were raised to equate self-worth with victory, your laziness might be the soul's rebellion against being merely a trophy. Chosen people are often slowed by the very forces that will later carry them, like a river pooling before the waterfall. Jung spoke of the shadow, the parts of ourselves we discard because they don't fit the persona, the social costume we wear for applause. Many ambitious yet lazy people build a shiny persona that crushes targets, while the shadow side carries grief, exhaustion, and fear of repeating ancestral burnout. The more you pretend that part doesn't exist, the heavier your feet become. Integration lightens the load. When you say, part of me is afraid of being seen, you stop wrestling ghosts and start welcoming guests. The energy locked in resistance begins to return. There's also the inferior function, Jung's insight that each of us has a less developed way of perceiving or deciding. High achievers often overforce their dominant functions. Thinkers overthink. Feelers overfeel. Intuitives overimagine. Sensors overplan. The inferior function is ignored until it triggers a shutdown. Your system cuts power to force you to diversify the inner team. That's why big goals can mysteriously silence you. It's an invitation to grow sideways, adding the neglected functions, body to balance mind, feeling to temper logic, details to ground vision. If all this sounds gentle, it is. Shame is poor fuel. Jung recognized that the psyche has a teleology. It moves toward wholeness. Your lazy phase might be individuation in disguise, the self rearranging priorities so success doesn't sacrifice your soul. Notice what you do effortlessly while avoiding the work. Diving into research rabbit holes, curating playlists, or walking while thinking. Those distractions often reveal the exact texture your real work needs. The soul practices in secret. Here's the reframing. You're not behind, you're backstage. Ambition is the spotlight. Laziness is the stage manager. Both serve the performance you were born to give. Let the pause teach you. Ask in Jung's style, what is my symptom asking for? Maybe it wants small actions true to the soul. Maybe it wants you to create like breathing, consistent, not competitive. Maybe it wants you to stop acting like a brand and start speaking like a human. When you follow that, momentum returns, not as a whip, but as ebb and flow. As Jung said, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. Notice the role of the persona. If the public face never stops performing, the private self will hoard rest like contraband. Jung warned, living only for the mask breeds neurosis. The more you curate an invincible image, the more the body must rebel to keep you human. Resistance becomes the truth keeper. When that keeper is honored, by letting life be a place where not knowing is allowed, the resistance loosens. The psyche relaxes when it trusts you're not selling yourself for applause. There's a spiritual reason why chosen souls get stuck in molasses before breakthroughs. The calling demands integrity. What you carry isn't a goal, it's a vocation. And vocation refuses shortcuts, because it's not just about the outcome, but who you become while creating it. Jung saw symptoms as meaningful telegrams from the self. That heaviness might say, grow the backbone to carry the message. Sometimes it means metabolizing grief bypassed by busyness. Sometimes it means shedding an impressive identity that starves the inner child. The body delays launch until the vessel is truly seaworthy for its passengers. Existential guilt clouds everything, not moral guilt, but existential. Silence envelopes the space when you're doing what many in your line couldn't. Survivor's guilt whispers, who am I to advance? Laziness becomes camouflage. It's safer to say, I'm unmotivated, than admit, I'm afraid to outgrow the tribe. When that's seen, the friction changes flavor. The task isn't forced push, it's blessing what's left behind and love carried to the heights. How do you return to the grind culture with new awareness? Perhaps by letting meaning lead energy. The psyche opens to work that feels like service, play, prayer, or honesty. Touch your why like touching a forehead in blessing, not to squeeze performance from it, but to remember you're in relationship with something alive. Let choices feel like permission, not conquest. Let the day have its own heartbeat. Inhale, receive, exhale, offer. Protect a small zone of reverence, where work isn't just content, but conversation. When movement comes from there, compulsion turns to flow, and laziness loses its job. There's another layer to the stuckness rarely discussed. Fear that true momentum will reveal your authentic proportions. If you've survived on impression, real rhythm, your pauses, odd tempo, nonlinear way, can feel like stepping on stage without armor. Individuation, for Jung, isn't always gentle. It pulls you back from borrowed identities to your true shape. Doubt isn't just laziness. It's a psyche test. Will you choose essence over image? When you do, the current that was still begins to move, not as adrenaline, but as a steady undertow. What ultimately frees isn't a sharper whip, but a deeper ceasefire. Ceasefire with the part that learned performance for safety. Ceasefire with the part that hides to be loved. Ceasefire with the shadow that keeps nagging because it still carries old wound stories. Jung taught that what you fight persists. What you befriend transforms. Imagine a gentle hand placed on the resistance, saying, "You've protected me long enough. Come along. We do this as who we are now." The psyche calms when it knows you're no longer serving false gods. Beneath, the self assembles you like a cathedral, stone by stone, echo by echo. That's why shortcuts burn. Fragile structures can't hold the music. But when the foundation is allowed to set, ambition becomes clean hunger, not panic. You start noticing you're no longer chasing validation like oxygen. You still feel the pulse of creation, but its urgency is detached from desperation. You're no longer trying to be chosen by the crowd. You honor that you've been chosen by the work itself. This is where outer applause loses its hypnotic pull. The persona can still wave, but it no longer drives. You find yourself doing the next honest thing, then the next, like being pulled by gravity, not dragged by fear. There's a quiet rite of passage here. You stop bargaining with time and start partnering with it. Hours are no longer enemies to conquer, but containers to fill with presence. The lazy label dissolves because you're no longer at war with stillness. You use it as a listening post. Then, rebirth happens subtly. You start seeing rest no longer as a withheld reward or secret rebellion, but as embedded rhythm. The masculine within gives the river's edge, the feminine gives the water. Animus sets direction without domination. Anima nourishes imagination without drowning. Enantiodromius settles into harmony, opposites held in one breath. Your work becomes less like rowing against the tide and more like aligning the sails. You start trusting the wind knows. What's left is a simple vow with your own life. Move from truth, not terror, not trauma, but from a joyful self. Let shame become composted humor. Let fear become scout, not warden. Meet the world with light in your chest, not a mask on your face. You never lost ambition. You guarded the fire until the vessel was worthy. Now walk, not to prove you can, but because stillness no longer feels true. The world doesn't need your performance. It needs your presence. On this journey, we see that laziness in chosen people isn't an end, but a bridge to wholeness. The soul, in its wisdom, slows us to align ambition with true calling, integrate shadows, and build harmony between inner poles. This isn't about forcing, but listening and making peace, so ambition becomes natural flow, not struggle. If this touches the part of you tired of performing and ready to be real, take a moment to like this video so more chosen people can find it. I want to hear from you in the comments. Do you have a similar story or a related insight on this theme? Share so others can breathe easier tonight. And if you want more grounded insights into soul psychology and spiritual growth like this, hit subscribe to Metasitta. We're building a brave and wise corner of the internet where ambition serves the self, not the mask. My suggestion, share this content with those who need it, maybe a friend or family member wrestling with similar stuckness. Your presence matters here. Let's keep connecting and growing together, one step at a time, toward a more loving world.